Welcome to Creative Tien channel. Today we are going to machine knit a tuck stitch cable. We have a video about tuck stitch on LK150 knitting machine, and this one we take it to a different level and do a cable based on the tuck stitch. The stitch is inspired by Ricky Monstock's book. I believe it's auto print, but if you can find it, they have a lot of charts and punch card design. You can use the patterning function of your knitting machine and just make your cable from the design. I try to make a very basic version of the cable with the tuck stitch on the LK150 by selecting needles with hand for the tuck stitch. I use the Torch Sports yarn. It's supposed to be sports weight, but it looks more like a light worsted or DK weight yarn. I pull out the needles from left 20 to the right 20, so it's 40 stitches total. You can add more stitches if you want. I start with simple E-rub cast on. You can use waste yarn cast on and have live stitches, so you can sew it up at the end using Kitchener stitch. You will be more seamless. I select tension 5 for both upper mast and the carriage. This is more like a sampler project. I try different stitches and tensions for each section of the scarf. After the E-rub cast on, I knit one row and start to select my tuck stitch needles depending on what pattern I want. And I leave the center 6 stitches to be plain stitches so we can do the cable in the center. And the 4th stitch on the left and right side is a tuck, so I pull the needle to the D position. And every other stitch or every 3rd stitch I pull out a needle to have a pattern. After selecting the needles for the tuck stitch, I change the rustle lever to 1 on both sides of the carriage for the tuck stitch. And for this project, I have 3 rows of the tuck stitch and then change the setting back to the plain knitting. That's a rustle lever to 2 on both sides of the carriage. And then we start to repeat the 4 rows again. We select the tuck stitch to the D position and change the setting to rustle lever 1 and knit 3 rows, and then change to rustle lever 2 and do 1 row of plain knitting. And we repeat this 4 times, so it will be 16 rows, and then we will do a cable. To do a cable, we can first take up all the weights so it's not too heavy, and count the 4th tuck stitch down from the 4th needle. So you can see the 3 lines. That's the stitch we can pick up and place on the left 3rd stitch. And since this is the first cable, I can just pick the lowest one, the casting on stitches, and place it on the left 3rd needle. It's up to you which stitch you want to pick up and place on the left current needle. And then we'll return the counter to 0 and start selecting needle all over again to repeat the 4 rows. And remember to adjust the setting for the rustle lever. For the tuck stitch, the rustle lever should be dialed to 1, and for plain knitting, it's the dial 2. And we just keep repeating these 16 rows again and again, and you will start to see the cable forming on the other side. And if you make mistake and pull out the wrong needle, you can fix it easily by using the transferring tool and place the yarn back to the hook. And now I'm trying to see adding some drop stitch, will that change the look of the pattern? So first I transfer some stitches to the next stitch and then drop that stitch. Then I try to see how it looks with just the plain stitch. So I only pull out the 4th stitch on the left and right side, and 2 drop stitches on left side and 2 on the right, and the rest are just plain stitches. And I need a section to see how it looks like. And I keep trying different variations of the pattern until the length I like, and I start to bind off. I just use very simple knitted bind off. I hand knitted one by one and transfer the stitch to the next needle and bind off directly on the knitting machine. After it's done, I give it a steam to flatten the piece. The tuck stitch is actually pretty flat. It curls a little bit, but not as bad as the plain stockinette stitch. After I'm done, it seems a little bit short for an infinity scarf, so I add another section with just tuck stitch. So I add another section with just simple tuck stitch. And I'm going to use the back side as a front side because the tuck stitch is more prominent in the back side. And I just sew it together with the binder clip to keep in place and a very simple whip stitch. So here is the final project. You can see the pattern is slightly different in every section because I try to change around. Because it has so much texture, you don't really see much mistakes. I hope you enjoy this project and try to make your own version of the scarf. Thank you for watching and see you next time.